Right. Good morning. Muscle Car Corner here at Big Daddy's Drag Racing Museum. We're going to talk about 1964. Very pinnacle year for him. Some big milestones. And I'm so happy to be here with Big Daddy Don Garlits. Good to see you,
Nice
my
to have you.
brother.
Hope you enjoy yourself.
Oh my gosh, it's just a great day to be here with you, sir. So let's touch on some of the big milestones of 1964. What do you want to start off with first?
Well, we won the Nationals at Indy, but to start off with, before the Nationals at Indy, they made these headers that pointed up, the zoomies we called them. And I got a set of them, and I ran Great Meadows, and it ran 200 miles an hour, 202. And I went from there, I went over to Detroit, and it ran 201 again. And Detroit was really tough. If you went 200 there, you went 200. So I called NHRA up and I said, when is the next record meet going to be when the books will be open? They said, Great Meadows, New Jersey in 2 weeks. I said, I'll be there and I'll be running 200. You're going to have a 200 mile an hour actual record. There have been a lot of 200s run, but they were on clocks that were not really acceptable. They varied because of they ran on generators, most of them. If the generator slowed down, you didn't run as fast. If it speeded up, you ran faster.
Gotcha.
So NHRA wouldn't accept any of those. They had to be Crondex, and they had to be at their events so they knew the track was measured properly. So they said, if you really think you're going to run 200, would you be open to taking your car completely apart, letting Hot Rod Magazine do a story on it?
Really?
I said, sure. So my wife and I went to Hearst Engineering. They loaned us a big building where they shot their pictures for Hearst.
Okay.
I completely disassembled this car by myself. My wife helped me a little with holding things, but there was no crew chief or nothing.
Wow.
Took it completely apart, laid it out. You can look in the Hot Rod Magazine, see how it all laid out. They shot the pictures. I put the car back together, and we drove over to Great Meadows, which wasn't too far away. And I was sitting in the car. It's August the 1st, 1964. And this kid walks up, and he says, when are you going to go 200, Big Daddy? I said, right now. I signaled the wife. We pushed up there, 201.34.
Wow.
And it was quite a deal. And
what was the ET?
The Nationals was next. We went to the Nationals, and at the Nationals, Wally asked me if I would be on the U.S. drag team, that they were going to England to introduce drag racing to the British. And I said I would love that. So I won the race, but just barely. Jack Williams got a terrible hole shot on me. I don't know how he got out so far because I left really close on the light. And just at the very end, it stuck a wheel out in front of him. To his dying day, every time I met him, he said, I won that race. He thought that they fiddled the end,
Sure.
But they did actually pass him, but it was right at the very end. But the interesting part of that story is, on the SS United States, on the way to England, we all traveled there with their trailers up on the deck, and they were on the deck roped out, so if we got a storm or anything, they cut the ropes and slide those trailers and cars right into the ocean. Yeah, so that the ship wouldn't get in trouble. Yeah, that we had to sign a paper that was okay. But it was nice weather. Now we did have bad weather coming back, but they shipped them on a freighter coming back down in the berth, because we would have had to cut them loose on the way back. But going over, Wall and I were having a drink one night, and Wall and I we were pretty good friends, even though, the books all show us turtle controversy all the time. We had some arguments. We were really good friends. And he says, you scared the hell out of me at Indy. I said, it scared the hell out of me. I said, Williams was really out. I don't know how he got out so far. He said, we had the fucking red lights turned off. He said, we thought because I had red lit the year before, and he wanted to make sure that I won the race because I'd probably jump again. And they wanted me to won the race to go on the drag team, so they turned the red lights off.
What?
And they said, we just in that tower like this. Oh, please get him. We couldn't believe it that you passed him right at the end.
Oh, my.
I always suspected they could do that if they wanted to,
Yes. Now, did Tommy Ivo and you run together? There was 5 runs with you together, wasn't there?
I think about 5 runs we ran side by side, yeah.
And who got who in those races?
I set the British land speed record at 197. And
wow.
The Ivo, my car was faster than his. Ivo was more of a showman, more than an actual racer. I don't know that he ever won a national event because he didn't run his parts hard. He just liked to have fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't about getting out there and just wrenching and blowing it up, like me and Shirley. We had to win. And but on the last race, I didn't know this. The big wins trophy was for the last race. And he won the last race. He says, Big, can't you just back that thing down just a little bit since you've been just beating the pants off of me? I said, sure, Tommy. And so he won the big wins. I got the wins trophy for the high speed and the British Land. It's in my office. But the top eliminator trophy was determined at the last race. But it didn't bother me. I had a lot of fun over there.
And
we went to a machine shop. I had a main bearing problem in northern England. And I went to this machine shop where all the machines were run by one motor, a hit and miss motor outside.
Wow.
And a big belts and shivs and stuff all through the building, these old-timey machines. And those guys really know how to use them, though. And they made me a main cap back there out of steel.
What?
Because the main cap had cracked.
Yeah.
They made me a nice main cap, took its place. Unbelievable.
Unreal.
I would have never believed it could have been done. No CNC or nothing like that.
That's
it wasn't
crazy.
even like my shop.
And you put it back together and
I put it back together
afterwards?
And I did back it down a little bit after that because it was running a little hard. That was another reason that it didn't win the last race.
How was it received with you guys coming over, all the English people? I bet you they were really excited about that meet and seeing these cars run.
The English, there was 30,000 people at the first event at Blackbush. They couldn't handle it all. I mean, it was unbelievable. And Sidney Allard, I got to meet him. Of course, Sidney Allard was a big hero of mine. He had a supercharged Chrysler in England, back in the early days. And I followed him, whatever he did. And Briggs Cunningham, I followed him because, he had Chryslers in the sports cars.
Sure.
And anyway, I had a place he had a big dealership, like a Ford dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a spot right behind his office at the shop that was paved, and that's where we would come back to London when we would go out to these different events. But we lived in London at the Sandringham Hotel. And so I'd go to Allard's place to work on my car. So the day after Blackbush, there was 2 doors. One led to the service department, and one led into the back of his office. And both doors looked just alike. It was the first day I was there. So I barged right into his office the next day after the race on Monday, and I couldn't believe my eyes. The English pounds, they pack them in 500-pound packages, and they're kind of a wax deal, and they coat them, and then they're sealed. And when they're in that pack, that you don't have to count because it's 500 pounds. They had a stack of these 500-pound packs on Allard's desk. It was like this. And there was one for Allard and one for one. And they were counting them when I walked in. And I said, oh, excuse me. Back out. They made some serious money there.
And what do you think that did as far as England getting into drag racing at that point? How many runs were there? How many times did you go back to England?
I've been back to England 2 more times. I went in '76. I sold them Swamp Rat 21,
Really?
and I went over and drove it for them. And they had it a year, and then the following year I went over and I drove it. I drove it for nothing, made the appearance, and they gave it back to me, less the motor. So, and then I brought it back here and I restored it, and it was in a museum in Sarasota for many years. And then they built this. They are building this big museum at Santa Pond.
Yes.
And so we restored the car again because it sat down in Sarasota. It was not in climate control, which is inside but not climate controlled. It took a hit. So we had to take it all apart, do all the chrome plating over.
Gotcha.
But we didn't paint it. The paint was okay. And so it's all restored now, nice, and we sent it back on a 10-year loan for their museum over there. And that car had the British land speed record at 234.
Wow. Wow, that's something. So the experience in England was just amazing, and it really brought a lot of technology to England. Did they ever do anything with their drag racing program as of today? Is it still going strong? I don't know that myself. Do you know?
Well, the team went back several years afterwards, continued to return. But I never went back after '64. Well, it's 6 weeks, and it was hard for me to be gone that long. My business really suffered in 1964 from doing that. So I wouldn't go back anymore. But they had a lot of people that could go back. And finally, then they built Santa Pod. They ran on airstrips for a long time, but finally Santa Pod was built. And of course, I think that's the reason they built Santa Pod, that's how it all got started.
Oh, okay.
And it's big time over there now. I mean, in fact, it's all over Europe. Finland, Sweden, they all have drag strips.
It's pretty big over there. Gotcha. Now, let's revert back to this car right here that's behind us. Tell me about this Swamp Rat.
Well, this is the first of the roundback cars. And the first one was Swamp Rat 6, which is in the other room, which was actually Swamp Rat 5, a squareback car. We cut the back off of it and made the first roundback car. We had just got these swoopy tail sections from Artie Ross in Baton Rouge. That's
Okay.
the fiberglass. He made those. That's a copy of a Wayne Ewing aluminum body from California.
Okay.
He copied that from Q-Ball Wales's car.
Oh.
And then he made these bodies and sold them. And then later, we built our own mold and made them ourselves. We sold a lot of cars like this. And anyway, the first one was Swamp Rat 6A. And it was, like I said, it was Swamp Rat 5B with the back cut off. So I went to California. The second car that we built was this car for Art Malone.
Oh, okay.
So Art Malone goes to California with the first full new chassis with the swoopy tail section, and mine was Swamp Rat 5 with the back half changed.
Okay.
So so the third car was going to be for Spencer Krumholtz. I got back from California. Spencer Krumholtz was waiting there at the shop, and he wanted this car. Well, it wasn't finished. There was my car sitting on the trailer. He said, well, I'll just buy that one. I said, you mean complete? Yeah, he says, I want it complete. I said, that'll be $7,000. He just wrote a check. So Spencer Krumholtz went down the road with Swamp Rat 6A, and I'll tell the rest of that story in a minute. So now the car on the jig was going to be mine that was almost finished. That would have been the third one. Art Malone rolls in with the first one, and he says, where's your car? I said I sold it to Spencer Kremholtz. My new one is on the jig. Aha! He says, you learned something. I didn't do so well. This car's a piece of crap. I want the one on the jig. I said, okay, but I get the body. And see, it already had a nice body put on it. He said, I don't care about the body. I want that new car on the jig. So the third car went to Art Malone, and I took his car. This was the second car. The first one, complete built, but the second one with the swoopy tail. And there was nothing wrong with it. I mean, it did just fine. And then I come back from California in 1965. This car won the U.S. Fuel and Gas Championships in 1965. That big race where 120 top fuel cars were in attendance.
Wow.
And it won $7,500. Yeah, Saturday was a 64 car field. I won that. That gave you the right to set out on Sunday while they won a 32 car field. And the winner of the 30 car field was my other car that Marvin Schwartz was driving. So we raced for the championship. And I come back from California. Marvin went out on tour, and I had guys waiting at the hotel to buy this car for $7,500. We didn't care, we was making them hand over fist by then. And I said, well, I got one race to do, boys. I got a match race at Great Meadows. I'll run up to Great Meadows, do the match race, and I'll be back, and you can have the car. The damn parachute failed at Great Meadows. The cable broke on the handle. Pulled the handle, nothing happened. McMeadows, I don't know if you know anything about it. It's short, and there's a railroad track at the end. Flipped it over the railroad track, just to kind of, because I was slowed down quite a bit, but it just bumped and hurt my neck.
Wow.
But it tweaked it. Come back to Tampa, I said, I had a little accident. I said, but it won't take much to fix it. We want our money back. We don't want no wrecked cars. So I give them their $7,500 back, and I kept the car. Thank God.
And here it is right here.
And so I just set it aside and just built. And because exactly at that time, we had Swamp Rat 8, which was the first 426 car.
Oh, okay.
And Chrysler called me and they said, we want you in the 426 car. We don't make 392s anymore. I said, it ain't as fast. He says, it'll never be as fast until you get in and drive it. It's a better engine. And so we didn't do it. We just set this all aside and concentrated on the 426 car, which that's a whole nother story in itself.
One question for you. Well, a couple, matter of fact. Why was it advantageous to change the rear body on this to go with a rounded body instead of the square? Was it aerodynamics that it helped? And what really made this car win the U.S. Nationals in '64? What did you have as far as an advantage over the other drivers and cars?
Well, it was a little aerodynamic because it kind of put the air back like it should. It took it out around the chute, which made the chute come out better.
Okay.
The chute went out straight instead of dropping down on the pavement. And it made safer roll cages. The square back wasn't as nice a roll cage as that.
Oh, gotcha.
It was just a better design. But we had just got a tubing bender, and we were bending our own tube. It takes a Pines bender, to do it. You have to pull a ball through the inside of the tube. Did you know how that works?
No, I didn't know that.
You can't bend thin wall tubing like you bend exhaust tubing. Even exhaust tubing, though, has a kink,
Yeah.
But we have a Pines. It's back there. Mark Williams built it. You know who Mark Williams
Yes.
is? He built 3 of them. I have 1 of them.
Wow.
One for himself, one for somebody else in mine. And so that's why we could do we was making all those bends all ourselves. And so that's what we'll do and make that. And then, of course, then the Artie Ross body, that for sure we had to have round tubes back there.
Gotcha. But what made this car win the Nationals? What did you have over and above engine-wise or aerodynamics?
It was just a good design. It was long wheelbase. It's 240 inches, 140 inches. And most cars at that point were around 120, and that's a little short. My car had more weight on the rear. And on top of that, I had a 50-pound bag of lead shot under the seat of this car all the time that I raced it, sitting in the seat in that body. Nobody ever knew that to make it stick.
Wow.
The
50
tires,
pounds.
usually the tires are pretty small
Yes.
for
7-inch tires.
in relationship to today, you know. And of course, these cars spun the tires all the way down. There was no sprayed tracks, you know, till 1973. Most people don't know that.
Didn't know
Yeah, that was one of the worst things that ever happened when they sprayed the tracks. Now, the least little wisp of smoke, the race is over. When you saw a wisp of smoke before, it meant the clutch locked up and they were gone.
Yes. Wow. So the 1964 drag racing team, there was quite a few other people. Sox and Martin was there. Ivo. Who was some of the other drivers that were there with the other classes?
George Montgomery,
Montgomery.
and there was a couple of lesser known cars that drove smaller cars. And I don't remember who all they were. There's Palmas, I think, was one of the guys.
De Palmas.
And the food was so different. We weren't used to it. We drank water with our meals, and the English don't ever drink water, you know. And we'd ask for the refills, you know, in the glasses, you know, because we've been out all day in the hot sun, you know, and then come in and need some water. We dehydrated. And one time the guy says, "Can I just bring the fire hose in?" They didn't like that. They want us to be drinking wine, you know.
Well, your wife, we did an interview in your other building, and your girlfriend was telling me the story about you had a bad head gasket, and they helped you get the material to make a new head gasket when you were in England. Do you remember that?
That was the last time I went to England in 2015.
Oh, 15.
Yeah, we blew a head gasket, and it dropped a valve at the same time. So we took the car apart, but it didn't hurt anything except that cylinder was hurt. And that car had plenty of power to make burnouts, you know, supercharged. So we took the two lifters, and you had to leave them in the galley because that's the oil galley. We put a hose clamp around the two lifters to hold them out from hitting the cam, but still keep the holes blocked off.
Gotcha.
And then we cut a pop can and made a gasket that sealed off the intake port, so nothing went down there. And the exhaust side, we didn't care. Of course, the push rods weren't in there. And that thing ran good. We made big, long burnouts right in front of the grandstands with it. Yeah, with something else.
Neat. What, the first 200 that you did, that you were the first one to hit the first 200, and it was in the sevens, wasn't it?
No, Kermasini's was the first one to be timed at 200 at Alton, Illinois. And then the next 200 was at Bainbridge, Georgia, with Swamp Route 1 with the supercharger. But the same kind of clocks at both places. They were Fostics. Like I told you, they were not accurate if the voltage varied even the least little bit. And so the Greek was the first officially timed at 200, but not a record. And then I was the second, but still not a record. But then that was in 1960. It took clear to 64 to really be able to go. And that's another thing it tells us it wasn't 200. I mean, if it wasn't 200, if he actually ran 200 at Alton, he would have certainly run some 200s pretty quick after that. And nobody did.
Yeah.
On NHRA clocks. And at the same time, most of the tracks were getting rid of the Fostic timers because they knew they were a problem and putting in Crondex, which was called a millisecond timer. And that was very accurate.
It was more of a quartz style watch. I mean, to keep time. Yeah. Now what was the next record for you after the 200? When you did 250, let's roll the clocks forward to what year was when you did your first 250?
Well, I went 240 with a 238 backup, That was the record, the first one over 240. And of course, I went 210 right away with the swap this car.
Oh, did you?
We went 210 at Pomona in 1965. But then the really big record that got all the ink was the 250 at Ontario in 1975.
Okay.
That really got the publicity because for several years, nobody could go past about 249. The record was 249.30, which I held, and they just couldn't beat that. And at Ontario, I warmed up at 249.30 and then went 250.69.
Wow.
But it took a special motor to do that, a motor that wasn't reliable. You had to work on it between rounds. And I come back from Ontario and I took that motor out of the car. I put it under the bench and covered it up and put tape around it. I said, nobody disturb this. We don't want this information out there. And I had built that in my motorroom quietly, at night at Sefner. And all it was higher compression, but that made all the difference in the world. But that made it not reliable. And it took them 7 years to figure that out before they started broke those records.
Wow. Wow. Let's fast forward a little bit to the blowover that you had and talk about that blowover. And I know you have the car in the museum here also, which I'd like to get a video of. But that blowover, can you talk about that? That was a pretty scary moment, I'm sure.
Well, that was Englishtown in July of 86.
86.
Yeah, and it was a warm-up run on Saturday morning, a qualifying run.
Sure.
And that thing was loaded for bear. And there was a tiny little drip out of one of the nozzles in the back, the aerated nozzles, which didn't mean nothing. It would have cleared right up as soon as you stepped on it, and it really sucked it in, And Herb was trying to mess with it, trying to figure out what it was. But I was already on full fuel. Ready. I was staging. And, we run them with the shut-off valve half open for all the burnouts and everything. But then I'd already pulled the lever back because Coletta stepped out in front of me and said, like, just a moment. And, but it was more than a moment. He struggled with that and couldn't get that leak to stop. And finally, they turned me loose. But I'd taken about probably 18 pounds of fuel, burned it out of my front tank, and that car was set to run off the line with exactly the weight that's supposed to be there. So when I left the line, it left like that. And it was going okay because the air was kind of holding it down. But first of all, it started to build up a cushion of air underneath because the fuel tank's right there. So there's a lot of flat surface right there.
Yes.
First thing you know, it had enough air. It overpowered the aerodynamics of the front end, pushed through that. And it was up about like this, and I said, I ought to pull the brake and pull this thing down, but it'll damage my front end, so maybe I'll try to get it down with the throttle. And I pulled back on the throttle, but it was already too late. It was up like that. And then when it got up there like that, though, it hit the wing stand, and then it kind of lifted the wheels a little bit, so it pirouetted. Well, the minute it pirouetted, it blew it back down.
God.
It's kind of a phenomena, what it did. But I'm running about 200 miles an hour at this point, and I'm going backwards 200 miles an hour, and I'm thinking, my God, I hope there's no photographers out there around the edge of the track or anything, because they're fixed to get killed. But there wasn't. There was nobody out there. And there's also, the motor was still running, so I just stepped down on the throttle and instead of grabbing the brake, because I knew that this would give me more stopping power than skidding the wheel. And boy, did it. And it's so funny because it's going backwards, spinning the wheels, and going back into its own smoke. Some of the weirdest pictures you'd ever want to see. But it stopped it real quick, and then when it stopped, the fuel rushed back forward, and the motor's revved up and overrode the clutch because, it's the triple clutch. So when the motor revved up, stopping, it shot the car back forward and coming out of the smoke. Well, the the NHRA saw the car come out of the smoke, and it was a panic time. They said, "Mayday, mayday! Runaway top fuel dragster headed to the starting line." So they sent the crash truck in. I'm going down the track real slow now, because the motor has shut off. It run out of fuel. It only revved up because it was running out of fuel. And here comes this truck, and I see it's coming straight at me really fast. And I said, "They think this is a runaway dragster." I quickly turned the car real quick and turned it off the dragster, because that damn truck would have run right up into the cockpit, probably kill me. And then they knew everything was okay, and I got out of the car and put my hands up.
Wow.
And then they asked me, was I going to go repair it at some shop? We could have probably repaired it, but I was a little bit disgruntled at that point. I said, "I'm not that crazy." So I took it home. We had to put a new front half on it because it slammed it pretty hard.
Yeah.
And then we went on. We won the championship with the car that year.
Really?
We still won. Set the record. 271 was the 272 didn't count. We didn't have a backup. But Englishtown, we went 271, would become the new record. And then the car's final run was at the Pomona. We won the 1987 Winter Nationals. And then 31 was ready. That was 30, and 31 was all finished in. It had a new nose piece with more aerodynamics and everything. And we went to Brainerd, Minnesota for our first run, made 6 runs there. And it just wasn't running real good. It was spinning the tires a lot. So they had just come out with that double element wing. So I got one from Mike McGarrah, and we put it on the car. We head to Spokane in the first run. That thing is really hauling to me. I'm going down the track. It's stuck. And we had slipping clutches in those days, but McGleesey had a extra set of arms in my clutch. And you push a button, and the throw-up bearing moved back and allowed those 3 extra arms to add more counterweight to the clutch. And you turn that on when you wanted to. So I'm about halfway down. I think I'll give it the extra clutch. I pushed that button. It went up just like that. Spun, tumbled down the drag strip. It was a mess. Tangled the chute up and everything. And because of that, I went through the lights at 215 miles an hour, 5.51 ET, which stood as low ET of the meet, upside down, backwards on fire. And it went way down to the end. The red car is still in the back building, next room. And I can't get out of the car because it ends up upside down in the dirt. There's no escape. And the fuel lines are busted because of all the action. The fuel lines are over me now. The fuel tank still got fuel. Fuel all runs down in the cockpit. And I say, boy, I tell you, I hope it don't catch on fire. And I hadn't even got it out of my mouth because the whole cockpit was in flames from the headers, the red hot headers. And I can't get out. But I had a fire bottle. But the fire bottle was way up front with a cable running to it and a little aluminum line coming all the way back to the cockpit. So I'm on fire, feeling around in the cockpit for the bottle. I said, I pray to God this thing works. And I pushed the button, and the cockpit filled up with halon, and the fire went out. And NHRA made me put that fire bottle in because of the cockpit. Nobody else had to have one. And so I was like a smartass, put it way up front. By the grace of God, it didn't tear the aluminum tube into or the cable, and the thing still operated. And what you take a look at it, you look at it's a wonder it did that. And a little while later, the safety people got there because I was about 5,000 feet from the end of the drag strip.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about a mile down there.
Well, maybe after this, we can go and take a look at that car and just kind of go over it. Yeah. We'll do a separate video on that. And, Don, I would like to, every other month or so, let's pick a pinnacle year for you and do this again every other month, and me come by and let's talk about some of the milestones of your career and how you got to where you are.
There's a lot of them.
Lot of them. We got a lot of videos we could be making.
They all got funny stories too.
I love it. I love it. So with you, the grace of God and us together, would like to put
About the grace of God, I'm sitting here.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I know that.
Let's talk about the Lord real quick, of how you got in with God back in the day, and how much it's done for your life. I'm a God-fearing man, and I tell you, I didn't understand when I saw it on your car back in the Gator Nationals back in the 70s, and I didn't understand putting you and God together. Talk to me briefly about that and how God came into your life.
Well, it all started in 1977. I've always been a Christian, but I never did anything publicly. But and I've been with the Navy. I was with the Navy for 30 years as a volunteer recruiter. After I went to Vietnam, I was so appalled. I went over there in 1971 for President Nixon with Richard Petty, and we went to the front lines and cheer the kids up.
Wow.
And I never forget, President Nixon says, I want you two boys, I want somebody that's afraid of nothing to go over there, because I want you to go to the front lines and cheer the boys up. Some aren't going to make it home for Christmas, and some are never going to make it home. And so we did. And I said, I'm a gun guy. I said, well, Mr. President, can we shoot back if we want to? He said, well, if you want to. But we didn't want to. We was happy to hunker down in that Huey and let the kids do the shooting. So when I got back, I went to the Navy and volunteered to be a recruiter, and they just loved the idea. So for 30 years, I was a volunteer recruiter. That's in 72. But in 77, they called me. They said, we're giving McEwen money for his car. It's sitting over there. You look at back here, you see Navy on it.
Yes.
And the Marines is giving Mickey Thompson money, and Perdome is getting Army money, and we got a little money, so we'd like to give you $75,000, but you got to paint the car blue and white. I said, it's okay. So I painted the top white. It's upper at 25. It's sitting, I think, right there. The blue wing.
Okay.
Right on the other side of the wall.
Gotcha.
So I painted it blue and white, and they said, what are we going to do? They make the stick-on letters now, so we're going to have the stick-on letters made, and we're going to put them on the car, on the starting line at Pomona, and make a big deal out of it at the Winter Nationals. So paint the car blue and white, put all your stuff on it that you want, but leave the side panel for the Navy blank. And I had been putting it down the top of the cowl.
Yes.
No charge as a volunteer. So it's sitting in the shop. It's late at night. I'm looking at that white cowl, and usually I had different things on the, if you look back there, you see the cowl. There's a rat coming out of the swamp. And I thought, God's been good to me. Why don't I give him a little credit? So I drew a cross on the floor, and I had a cross there. And I said, God is love. And I put that on the cross, and I said, that's what I want to know. So I called up the sign shop in Brandon, and they cut me out a cross. I went and got it and stuck it on the car. So I arrived at Pomona with no sponsor, just my name, but no sponsor, but a big blank spot for Navy, and the cross on the cowl. And Shav Glick, the motorsports editor for the Los Angeles Times, comes to the pits, nice guy, he's dead now. And he says, Big Daddy, how are you? I said, fine. Well, what's your sponsor? I said, it's going to be the Navy. I explained to him that they're going to put the signs on the car on the starting line. And he says, tell me about that cross. I said, well, Chef, look at the wrecks I've had and different times I could have been killed. And I said, God's always looked out after me. So I just thought to give him a little credit. Well, that's nice. That little pad you're flipping right now, you know how they used to do it. Now it's all recorded.
Sure.
So he goes into the pits. I wasn't in the pits for some reason. They had me pitted differently. I think I was up by the gate where people could see my car before they came in. He goes down the pits, and to the person, not one person had anything nice to say about it.
Really?
They all had sharp remarks. Yeah, he's got no sponsor. He's looking for the Big Daddy sponsor in the sky. He's been breathing too much nitro.
Wow.
He's over the hill. Look how old he is. He shouldn't even be driving anymore. It's dangerous. Oh, yeah. And the next morning, the Los Angeles Times, they call it Under the Mast. That's the name of it. That's when the story, it just says Los Angeles Times, and then the big letters. And it was this tall. It took 2 lines. Garlits seeks Big Daddy sponsor in sky.
Wow.
Quote. And then the whole rest of the page was all the stories about everything. What I said, and Shirley said, Perdome said, every one of them's quotes was right in there. And I mean, the publicity for NHRA was fantastic because the people, they don't even hear ads. They turn their brain off,
Yes.
But here's the editorial, and they read every word of it, and they know there are people there because the papers actually interview them. They know who's at the race. So here comes the Navy the next morning. I've already seen the paper. The Navy's got the paper. They said, Mr. Garlits, have you seen the Times? I said, yes, sir. Isn't it great? No, it's not great.
What?
I said, it's not? I said, they spell my name right. That's what my dad said. No matter what they say, make sure the name's spelled right. He says, this will offend atheists. And atheists then won't want to join the Navy. I said, to hell with them. Who cares about atheists? And he said, well, we want to get all we can get. I said, you have a chapel on every ship with a chapman in there. And you're telling me I can't have a cross? Well, we don't make the atheists go in there. Before they know that, they're already in the Navy.
Wow.
That cross has got to come off that car. I said, cross ain't coming off the car. Well, I'm going to give you the $75,000. I said, I didn't ask for it in the first place. I said, you can still be on the top of my cal. I said, you're not firing me for being a recruiter, are you? Oh, no, we're not firing you. No, we just can't give you the $75,000. I said, that's fine with me. See you guys later.
Gosh, what a story.
That car earned over $600,000 in a 2-year period, won 24 out of 30 national event starts.
Wow.
There's never been a percentage like that. It did have the Big Daddy sponsor in the sky.
What's the moral of that story?
I immediately put Big Daddy where the Navy is supposed to go, and the cross that's on that cal is the cross that I put on that car in 1977. It's all over. Never been touched.
Gosh, that's a neat story. I love it. Man, that just...
This whole place is a testimony to what we're talking about. One man can't do what you see here. I mean, the artifacts in here, the way they've shown up, and people just turn the stuff over to us. A good example is Raymond Godman.
Okay.
The car right there at the corner, the first car as you come in the door.
Yes.
That's the last car left that's original that was at the first U.S. Nationals. That's the Boll Weevil.
Wow.
That competed at 1955 in Great Bend. Then he had his slingshot and his funny car that he raced. And had them all, and he passed away. One rich guy offered Jane Godman, the wife, $100,000 for the 3 cars. And she says, the cars are going to the Don Garlits Museum where Raymond's legacy will live on. I don't want the money.
Man, that's a good story. Well, I think the good...
We got 4 Shirley cars. We have 4 Perdome cars. I think we have 4 Greek cars. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, the good Lord did help you win
There's
all
only
those.
a couple of mine actually missing.
Is there? What cars are missing?
The wing car from 1963 that won the Winter Nationals, we come back, it was a little short, dangerous, so we built a nice new car, Swamp Rat 5B, and Chrysler says, take the Hemi out of that car and put a 413 max wedge motor in it with a supercharger. We want to borrow it for the dealerships. And so it was a couple of years, and then my boss at Chrysler retired. The guy that cut the deal retired. He went to California. So I called him one day out in California. I said, Frank, you think they're ever going to get through with the Swamp Rat that you got borrowed? He said, I'll look into that. He calls me back. He says, Don, they don't know where it is. Nobody knows where it is. I says, oh my God. They said, just tell us how much it's worth and we'll send you a check. I says, I don't really want to take a check. I'd rather you just keep looking. And they're still looking. It never has shown up.
Wow.
I know what happened. The last dealer that had it, they didn't tell him where to send it. See, they would tell each dealer, when you get through with it, it goes to here. Well, they never gave him the instructions where to send it next. So he just took it home, put it in his private collection, waiting to hear from them. And then, of course, then all the museums and everything and the nostalgia and all those cars became real valuable. And just waiting for me to die, and then they'll show up at auction somewhere.
Well, I know that you don't get rid of much of anything. You've got.
So we built a replica of it.
Did
so
you?
that people could see it was the first wing car.
And where?
Now, that was a story in itself.
Where is that car at?
It's in the back room back there.
In the back room.
Yeah. They just had the 1,000th Top Fuel Trophy Award at the 4-Wide this year. And the first one was at Pomona in 63 when I won that race. So they made a replica of the trophy, and then I went to the 4-Wide and presented it to the winner,
Okay.
the Connie Coletta's driver.
Yes.
And but my trophy had been destroyed in the tornado of 1966 when it swept through Tampa. So they knew that. So in the pre-race ceremonies, they called me up to the stage on the starting line. They're talking about going to give the trophy, and the big trophy sitting right here, is going to give this trophy to the winner this afternoon when the winner of the race. And then they pulled the thing off of it, had my name on it. And they said, that one's for you because we know you lost yours. So they had that one made for you.
Nice.
And the other one you're going to give to the winner this afternoon. It's back there with the car.
Nice. Well,
I spent a lot of money on those trophies. It wasn't like the original wooden ones. These things are black marble, beautiful things.
Really?
Yeah, they're a sight to behold.
So 1964 was a pinnacle year for you in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Well,
And
one thing also, it had a lot to do with the money. Up to 1964, I made a lot of match races, but I didn't make any money. I was making my money with my shop, my business.
sure.
But in 64, I actually made more money with the race car than I made with the business. And I could have made more if I'd have went to more races. And so 65, I really concentrated on the race car and let my brother run the shop.
Oh, okay. What kind of money do you think you made in 1964 as a total of that year? What, as far as winnings?
I probably made a couple $100,000
Wow.
in 64, which was a lot of money back then.
Was that after everything was paid for? The cars, the fuel, the
Men
tires?
worked for $50 a week then, and was happy to get it. I never forget when Tommy Lemons came to work in 67, I think it was. He wanted a job. Swingle brought him back from Oklahoma. I said, we don't pay a lot here and we work hard, long hours. I said, would $50 be enough? Oh yeah, he says, I'd do anything to race. I work for nothing to be able to go racing. Yeah. He says, I'm not interested in any mundane 9-to-5 jobs.
Man, $200,000 back
He was
in...
with me 45 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Died on the grounds here.
Did he?
His ashes are right down there in his booth.
Oh, man.
Down there's a silver urn down there. It's got his ashes in them.
He earned his spot in this museum.
There's a lot of the guys' ashes here. Swingles is over there. Bob Taft's is in this next booth. Not this, but the next one down is that silver urn. Bob Taft's ashes. My mother's ashes are in the building next door. My wife's ashes are in a silver urn in my office. Mine are going in there with her.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So, talking about...
this place is special.
It is.
And no doubt about it.
I've been coming here for many years.
Well, we were at the Sefner to start with, 6 years. Never had a visitor, a paying visitor. Had a lot of people come, but they didn't pay any money, all friends and all. And my wife said to me one morning, what are we going to do with that white elephant when you can't race anymore? I said, well, I always thought I'd move it to the interstate. She said, you would leave this home, this beautiful home? I said, no, put it right up on 4. It's only about 5 miles away. She said, it wouldn't work on 4, honey. That's just for the people that live in Orlando, work in Tampa, live in Tampa, work in Orlando. And they just pass each other 2 times a day. He says, you got to get on a tourist route. That's 75. So we started looking, and we found a beautiful piece of property down at Brooksville, at the Brooksville exit.
Yes.
And we drive by and look at it. And so in January of 1982, I had just turned 50. And I said to my wife, I said, I'm 50 years old now. How long am I going to want to do anything? Let's go see what we want for that property up there in Brooksville. How much money do we have? She always ran the money. In a few minutes, she says, we can write a check for $80,000 and still have enough money to run the dragster. Had to have enough money to run the dragster. Well, things happen.
Sure.
I said, that'll do it. Let's go get that property. So we drove up to Brooksville, and thank God the guy wanted $250,000 for that piece of dirt. Yeah, it ain't got anything on it yet. And we never borrowed any money to buy anything. We never borrowed money to buy a car or a house. Did you know that?
No.
We saved the money and bought it when we got it saved up. So anyway, we got a real estate agent. They said, oh, no problem. We can get you something. Wasn't nothing. We looked all the way from Lake Panisovsky all the way back to Brooksville. Wasn't a thing available that was in our price range or anywhere near the location that we need. We wanted to be close to the interstate. So we kind of, it's a kind of a depressed feeling. We're heading back to Tampa. I said, honey, let's stop here at Route 50. There was a Holiday Inn there at the time. And let's get a room. And then tomorrow we'll go further north, get up toward Ocala. We never liked Ocala because it was a speed trap back in the day. And we had to drive through it every time we were going over to the East Coast because we come up 41 to Route 200, over 200 to 301 and north. And when you got into Ocala, you better not drive 35 miles an hour like the sign says because they're going to say it's 36 and get $15. Oh, yeah, they were bad. Just a podunk town.
Yeah.
So we got the hotel room. We went to dinner, come back to the room, and we got down on our knees and we prayed to God about this. We said, maybe we're not doing the right thing. Maybe we're supposed to be there at that homestead in Sefner because my dad had left me that property when he was killed in an auto accident. Mom and Dad had planted 65 fruit trees on the ground, citrus. It had pecan trees, pear trees, a beautiful lake out back. We water skied every afternoon in the summer.
Wow.
Chrysler had given me a ski boat back in '66. I still have that too.
Really?
And I said, Lord, maybe we're not supposed to be doing that. Maybe you want us to stay right there in Sefner. But we're going to go look tomorrow. We're going to look all day. And if we cannot find a property that we can afford or that would be suitable, well, no, you don't want us to move. So we went right through Wildwood. That's the one down below us. That's just a big truck stop. And this was the next exit, completely undeveloped. And here was this 16 acres, which is exactly what we needed, sitting right here, touching the interstate.
Yep.
Not a thing on it except trees back there on 475. And my wife just got giddy as we come off the road and said, oh, we can put the museum right there and we can build our house up in the trees. I said, honey, I don't see any for sale signs. It may not be for sale. So we parked up on 475. I got out of the car and I got down in the ditch. I was going to pace it off to see how big it was because we needed about 16 acres. And I knew how they cut sections up. Well, I'm a real estate agent, whether you know that or not.
No.
I'm just inactive, but I renew my license every year.
Wow.
I take my tests.
Neat.
And under a little bush was a sign about this big as this Mopar. And it said, for sale, and had a phone number. We write the number down. We jump in the car. We drive over to Stuckey's, which is now the orange shop. Use the payphone. This is 82. The phones are still attached to the walls.
Sure.
Dial the number. This lady answers the phone. It's about 8:30 in the morning. She says, this is Shirley. What do you want? And Shirley Muldowney had just beaten me in the AHRA championships for 1981. First time I'd been beaten, and it was by her. It was it shook me up.
Yeah.
But I got a hold of myself, and I said, ma'am, there's a piece of property over here on the interstate in 475. It's got your phone number on it. She said, that's my property. What do you want to know about it? I said, I only want to know one thing. How much is it? She said, it's $80,000 cash.
What?
I'll tell you, that should raise a hair on the back of your neck.
It was meant to be.
We don't know what we're messing with.
Wow.
I said, I'll take it. She says, what are you going to do with it? I said, I'm going to put a museum on it. She said, sir, you can't put a museum on it. It's agriculture. I said, I'll just get the zone changed. She says, don't you think it would be prudent to get the zone changed before we actually sign the contracts? I said, no, I'll take my chances with the county commissioners. I want it right now just like it is. She says, fine with me. Meet me at Gus Galloway's and we'll sign the papers. So I went over to the real estate office and signed the papers. But it took 30 days for the title insurance to clear. So 30 days later, it was mine. And so my wife and I are walking down that south fence line, which was an old barbed wire fence then. And this man, there used to be a real fancy house next door. It burned down while we was here. This man come out of the house and come over to the fence. He says, Mr. Garlits, I'm Robert DuPont of the DuPont family.
What?
We own this farm south of you. We did not know this property was for sale. And we saw the sale in the public announcements. We'll give you $180,000 for it right now, cash money. I said, Mr. DuPont, that's a generous offer. I said, but I would never be able to sell this property. He says, why is that? I says, because God personally gave it to me. So anyway,
Man.
I got my paperwork up for the zone change. I had a 2-page speech, and I'm telling all about this. I'm gonna bring these people from all over the world, and I didn't even have one visitor down there that paid money, right? And it's gonna explode into this great big museum. It's gonna be the biggest museum in the world about drag racing and all this stuff, you know. I got 2 lines out of my mouth, and the county commissioner, Don Green, the chairman, stop, we don't want to hear it. I'll tell you, my heart stopped. It
Oh, my
scared me
God.
to death.
Oh my gosh.
It raises the hair on my arm as much as when the lady said 80,000. I was like, what in the, mine goes a mile a minute. I said, what are these guys? Are they nuts? And then he says, we're going to give you the zone.
All right.
What we want to know is why did you land on that intersection? It's never going to be nothing.
Here we are.
Look out there. They can't widen the roads fast enough.
That's a good story.
I did bring them. We had 50 people here 2 years ago from Moscow. Came to the United States to come to this museum.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a big tour coming from New Zealand later this year.
Later this year?
Yeah. They call ahead to make sure that I'm going to be here. I'm always here for those deals.
I'd like to be here. I'd like to be here for that as well.
Now, mind you now, and this will finish the story. By 1983 March, this room was finished or built. This building was built, and the machines were in there, and we're building these half walls. And all the cars were piled in here. It wasn't like you see it now. Because we were walking and working,
Sure.
It's March 1983. A car pulls up beside where we're working out on that apron out there, the carpentry work. And a guy gets out, and he's got his wife and 3 young boys. He said, is this the drag racing museum? I said, yes, sir, but we're not open yet. I said, we're still building the stalls and stuff, the displays. But those doors were open because it was cool like it is now, and we weren't running the air. And he walked at that door, and he looked in everything we owned was in this room.
Wow.
There was no cars stored anywhere. In this 10, it was kind of jammed up though,
Sure.
And you could get around. We were where we were working. It was open. And he looked at it, and he come back. He said, "Mr. Garlits, we've come a long ways. Would you mind if we just went in and looked at the cars? We won't touch nothing." I says, "No, but it'd be $5 each." And he shelled up. They became my first paying customer. They've been back. The boys are grown men now, naturally. And they were here all afternoon while we were building these half walls.
Yes.
March of 1984, that's 1 year later, this was all finished and lots of these walls were painted. The Escadarian, that one, the Go Navy, the Winds.
Yes.
Not down there, that was later. The American Hot Rod Association,
Mm-hmm.
the Winston, the Moroso, and the Coors.
Yes.
Those were finished. And the cars were placed here. In 1983, 84, March, we cut a ribbon out front. The sheriff was here. The preacher was here. Some dignitaries from racing. But between that ribbon cutting and that couple with the 3 boys, I sold over 11,000 tickets, and we were not open.
Wow. That's amazing.
It was going to be a success. And
Yeah.
27,000 the first year. From zero.
Well, you had a vision.
250,000 cars go by there every 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're bound to get some of them.
Oh, of course.
And we've done surveys. The average person passes 7 times before they make it a destination.
Neat.
Because on the interstate, you're going somewhere,
Yeah.
And it's better if they pass us at night because the signs are all lit up and you see us better. In the daytime, we just look like tin sheds, And nobody has any idea how big it is. It's 65,000 square feet altogether, all the buildings.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
From originally 15.
Wow. What's your next vision as far as what you're going to do with the place?
Well, looking into the future, I hope that someday we'll be able to buy the DuPont farm. It's not DuPont anymore. They sold it
Gotcha.
to some French people. I would like to buy that farm next door and build a huge, beautiful museum that wouldn't be quite so crowded as this. And with all of it in one building, the antique cars will be under one roof and really pretty, you know.
Yeah.
It's about a $25 million project, not counting the property. The property would be $10 million.
Wow.
That would be, that's what I think would be nice eventually.
That's
It would really be a world-class museum.
That's a dream that can come true. That's a dream that can come true, though.
You never know.
You know?
You know, people, philanthropists leave huge sums of money to people. We just got one the other day. It wasn't huge. It was $25,000. A philanthropist just said, "We like what you're doing. Here's $25,000."
Wow.
And there's billionaires that could leave millions if they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, you know, I really appreciate this interview. I would like to do this on a regular basis, and let's talk about the different years
We just have to plan them in advance.
going forward. And maybe we can do some shorts of some of the cars that are really instrumental with you talking about certain cars in here as well. So I've got time if you've got the time, and I'd sure love to do that because you've been a hero of mine ever since I've been a kid, and I've followed you forever, you know. And I did want to let you know that I am adoptable. But I appreciate it, Don. We're going to do this again, and I can't tell you how much that I appreciate your time. And
You can go around and get some B-roll, I guess, right?
yes, sir. And we're going to do this again soon. So I appreciate you more. God bless, and thank you for everything you've done.